Evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome, one and all, horizontal and vertical. I hope. What's happened to the vertical stream? I have no picture. Why do I have no picture? That's rather strange. Bear with me. Okay. Where's the flag? Let's try this. There we go. Now we have a picture. Right. Okay. Good evening. Good evening. Here we go. Tonight we're going to go into the UK and why it's turned into what it has. Yes, Espresso Mechanic TV. Good to see you. Good to see you. Not a lot of people hanging about the chat tonight. Tuesday night. It's a funny night, isn't it? Right. Anyway, I'm going to crack on and see how it goes. Right. Welcome back to the channel where we dissect the absolute clusterfuck that is modern Britain. I'm your host, Sergeant Grumpy, and today we're diving into something so monumentally depressing I've had to double my coffee intake just to get through the research. Today's topic, how Britain managed to turn itself from a reasonably prosperous nation into an economic basket case in just 17 years. Before any of you start typing, it's not that bad, shut it. We'll get to the evidence. And trust me, it's worse than you think. Chris, how do? Good to see you, mate. Good to see you. Now, I know what you're thinking. Can't we have a movie review or something like that? And yes, you can have a movie review. If you go over to Snarky-Cinema, you can get as many movie reviews as you want from the Grumpy Scot. He may be a relation of mine. Someone in the chat said that they'd been listening to my son, the critical drinker, which I thought was quite humorous. Right. The economic disaster affects every single one of you watching this. Your wages, your housing costs, why your local hospital is falling apart, why the roads have more holes than a Swiss cheese convention. We're talking about 1.8 trillion in lost economic potential since 2008. That's not made up. It's not YouTube clickbait bollocks. That's real money you should have been in your pocket, funding your NHS, fixing your infrastructure. So before we dive into this economic horror show, let's see who's watching. Anyone in the vertical chat, you want to join in? We had some good chat there last night as well. You only need to be a subscriber. It costs nothing and there's no waiting period. You can chat straight away as soon as you sign up. And you're not tied to it. You know, you can leave anytime you like. Right. Let me paint you a picture of just how badly we've fucked up. If Britain had maintained the economic growth trends we had before 2008, the average household would be £11,000 better off per year right now. £11,000 per year, every household. That's 3 or 4 weeks' wages to some people. Sorry, that's 3 or 4 months' wages to some people. And that's just gone. Vanished into the ether of political incompetence and ideological stupidity. And it gets worse. We are now dead last among the G7 nations for business investment. Last. Countries like Slovenia and Latvia are attracting more private investment than we are. Let that sink in. We're being outperformed by countries that didn't even exist as independent nations when I was born. And here's the really infuriating part. This wasn't some unavoidable natural disaster. It wasn't an asteroid hitting the Earth or aliens deciding to enslave humanity. Every single bit of this economic decline was preventable. It was a result of specific policy changes made by politicians who either didn't understand basic economics or simply didn't give a toss about the consequences. We were the fourth biggest economy in the world, espresso. Well, if you take London, I think that's something like, is it 57th or something? Just ahead of Sweden. And that would just be London, because the rest of the country would drag London down further. We really are in the shithole. We are approaching being a third world country. So we're going to walk through how we got here, starting with the 2008 financial crisis that revealed just how dangerously stupid our economic model had become, and then through the austerity madness, the Brexit catastrophe, the COVID cock-ups, and finally the Ukraine situation that's costing us a fortune we don't have. So, nice to see you, Dread-Eye and Julie. Glad to see you actually made it. Past third world already. We could well be, yeah. I think we could be. It's just one of these things. So, and yeah, you're right. The global recession did affect everyone. It did. But here's the thing. Other countries have recovered. And they've recovered way better than we did. Even Germany and France, even Canada managed to do a better recovery job than we did. So what was our biggest policy mistake? So let's start at the beginning of this shit show, the 2008 financial crisis. It didn't just happen to hit Britain. We practically painted a target on our backs and begged it to destroy us. By 2010, the UK clearing banks had balance sheets worth 450% of our entire GDP. In 1990, that figure was just 75%. We turned our entire economy into one giant casino, and surprise, surprise, when the house of cards collapsed, we got buried deeper than anyone else. The government ended up owning 70% of the Royal Bank of Scotland and 43% of Lloyd's. We essentially nationalised our banking system. The very same banking system that free market ideologues had spent decades telling us was too important to regulate properly. And here's where it gets really stupid. Instead of learning from this disaster and building a more balanced economy, what did we do? We doubled down on the exact same policies that caused the crisis in the first place. Enter George fucking Osborne, the man who somehow convinced the country that the way to recover from a financial crisis caused by private sector excess was to cut public spending? Brilliant. Absolutely fucking brilliant. Between 2010 and 2019, we implemented spending cuts equivalent to $540 billion in lost public expenditure. That's more than an entire year's worth of government spending. Just gone, not put into the economy. Meanwhile, countries like Germany maintained higher levels of public spending. And guess what? They recovered faster and stronger than we did. Between 2010 and 2019, sorry, I nearly repeated that section. But here's the absolute kicker, the bit that should have made every single one of you furious. From 2009 to 2016, the government could borrow money at basically zero interest rates. In real terms, accounting for inflation, they were sometimes being paid to borrow money. To not borrow money under those circumstances is gross ineptitude, incompetence, and fucking outright stupidity. But no, we didn't. We cut spending. This was the greatest missed opportunity in modern British economic history. We had 7 years of free money and we said, no thanks. We'd rather make things worse. It's like when you've got high inflation and you get interest-free loans to buy a car and things like that, you're effectively paying back with devalued money. You're stupid not to, if you can get it. So let's talk about the dynamic duo of economic destruction, Cameron and Osborne. These two absolute wankers managed to convince the country that the way to grow an economy was to shrink the government. Now, I'm a great fan of small government. But in this case, it was a bit like trying to fill a bath by removing the plug. They based their entire policy on something called expansionary fiscal contraction. That's an oxymoron, isn't it? The idea that cutting government spending would somehow boost business confidence and increase private investment. So the government won't spend money, but private industry will. Why? You know, if you don't have the confidence in your own country to put up the money, why should outside people do it? You know, whether they're from inside the country or outside. The theory had been thoroughly debunked by economists before they even implemented it. But did they listen? No, they did not. The result, the longest period of wage stagnation since the Victorian era. That's not hyperbole. We literally hadn't seen working people's pay stagnate for this long since we've had workhouses and children working in coal mines and sweeping chimneys. If we'd kept on at the rate of growth that we had, we'd have done well. As it is, effectively, the standard British wage is at the same level it was in 2008. That's why everything feels more expensive. And here's the thing. Austerity didn't even achieve its stated goal of reducing the deficit quickly. Other countries used a mix of spending cuts and tax increases. We went almost entirely for spending cuts, which meant we had to cut deeper and for longer to achieve the same fiscal adjustment. But the human cost? Let's get really dark. Research by LSE and King's College London found that austerity cost the average person in the UK nearly half a year in life expectancy. That's equivalent to about 190,000 excess deaths between 2010 and 2019. That's a lot. That's an extra 190,000 people dead because George Osborne thought cutting spending during a recession was a good idea. And the cuts weren't even evenly distributed. They hit the poorest communities hardest. Cuts to benefits, cuts to local councils, cuts to legal aid, cuts to mental health services. All so we could maintain low taxes on corporations and the wealthy. It was a Tory government after all. So, it's pretty sad. So we need to address the elephant in the room. Some of you are probably thinking, but we had to reduce the deficit after Labour's spending. Well, no, we didn't. Why? Why did we? The deficit was caused by the financial crisis, not by Labour spending. The deficit spiked because tax revenues collapsed when the economy crashed, and spending increased on unemployment benefits. Every major economy saw their deficits increase during the crisis. That's what's supposed to happen during a recession. And the promised surge in private investment to replace public spending never happened. Business investment has been weaker in the UK than any other G7 country for most of the period since 2010. Turns out when you create economic uncertainty and reduce demand in the economy, businesses don't want to invest. Who could possibly have predicted that? All right. Every other economist in the world other than George Osborne. Hatchie Hatchie, John Rambo is on the plane with Trump. England is saved. Excellent. Thank you, Hatchie, for that information. So, and I voted for Brexit just to put my cards on the table. I thought we could change, we could save the money that we were pumping into the EU, we could secure our borders, we could do things properly, we wouldn't be subject to undue influence. But here we are 5 years after it actually occurred, and nothing's changed. We're still paying our dues to Europe. We're still funding a country that wants to join the EU that doesn't even fucking like us against a disagreement they're having with Mother Russia. Why are we doing this to ourselves? This is like watching Scotland play football. Just when you think you're getting somewhere, they will fucking snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And when your country's doing it, you're thinking, what the hell is going on with these people? Why can't they see what's going wrong? I mean, if I had to vote again, I would say, no, let's just stay in Europe, because nothing's fucking changed since we left. Nothing, except prices have gone up. We haven't done anything sensible since we left Europe that's made a difference. All we've done is cost ourselves some heartache and a lot of money, as you're going to find out, because once you start digging into the actual moolah, then you've got to think, well, why did we leave? So Brexit, the decision to leave the world's largest trading bloc during a period when our economy was already struggling. It is, you know, like deciding to amputate your leg because you got a slight limp. Yeah. Remember all the promises? 350 million a week for the NHS, 350 million extra for the NHS. Easiest trade deals in history. German car manufacturer would be banging down our door. Global Britain. Every single one of these promises has turned out to be weapons grade bullshit. Nothing has come to pass. Nothing. We have been well and truly shafted. Europe hasn't let go, and we haven't let Europe go either. That's the problem. The Office for Budget Responsibility, that's the government's own economic forecasting body, estimates that Brexit has reduced UK productivity by 4%, lowering GDP by approximately 40 billion annually. That's £600 per person per year just gone. Now, I could understand if we'd secured our borders and we went bringing in masses of immigration, you know, to take jobs that British people should be taking. But no, we're still doing that. We haven't secured anything. And I'm not talking about illegals here, I'm talking about regular migration, because the amount of people coming in from the subcontinent of India is incredible. You have no idea, and they circulate them like for every 6 months, so none of these guys are paying tax. They come in, do the job for 6 months, then fuck off back to India. I've seen it happen. Major banks are doing it. I've worked in their call centres. I've seen them doing it. It's a big scam. Corporations are shafting us left, right and centre. I think you did call it right, Espresso. Espresso says, I said at the time of Brexit there wouldn't be any winners. And I think you're 100% right, Espresso. No matter what the outcome, there weren't any winners. And the investment impact has been even worse. Since Brexit, UK business investment has been absolutely dire. Well, look what happened just recently. Ineos has pulled out of Britain, says it's not competitive anymore. They're away to the States. Between the referendum in 2019, our business investment grew by less than 2%. Every other G7 country by over 6%. Think what that means. First, other countries were building new factories, upgrading their technology, investing in their workers' skills. We were sat in the corner arguing about sovereignty and blue passports. Great job, UK. You know, we had the wool pulled over our eyes. Certainly pulled over mine. I wasn't as sharp then as I am now on politics and economics. Because I wasn't really bothered, you know. I just thought, oh, yeah, we'll vote to get out. And, you know, what a waste of time that was. Yeah, the normal outcome, we got shafted, that's right. Yeah, especially, well, there you go, Espresso, and it hasn't done anything of the sort. It's still through the roof. So trade impacts were now measurable fact, not forecasts. Facts. Research shows Brexit has led to a 23.7% decrease in imports from the EU and an 18.6% decrease in exports to the EU. We've voluntarily made it harder and more expensive to trade with our nearest neighbours. The economic equivalent of burning down your own shop. I mean, yeah. What the hell are we doing? Why did we make it so difficult? I mean, there should have been a better way of doing this if we really wanted to maintain sovereignty and not go to the euro and keep our own laws. The thing that gets me, and I still hate the EU for this, is it's not a fucking trading bloc anymore. It's a dictatorship. And that's the problem. Because they are wrong in the way that they address the things they go about. Look at what they're doing just now. Anyway, the fiscal cost. Springford's analysis suggests Brexit has cost the UK Exchequer approximately $40 billion in lost tax revenues between 2019 and 2024. £40 billion. That's money that could have avoided the tax rises every government since has had to impose. And we're not talking about sovereignty here, we're just talking about economics. Economically, Brexit has been a complete and utter disaster. We've made ourselves poorer, we've made ourselves less productive and less attractive to international investors because we're not investing in ourselves. And what really pisses me off is the uncertainty. For 3 bloody years after the referendum, businesses had no idea what our future relationship with Europe would look like because we fannied about. They never said what was going to happen. And you can't plan investment, you can't make hiring decisions, you can't do anything when you don't know what the trading rules will be next year. And that uncertainty alone probably cost us more than the actual Brexit deal did. And it was entirely self-inflicted. And then we get to COVID. Jeez. And before anyone starts with, well, COVID affected everyone equally. No, it fucking didn't. It didn't. UK was hit harder, both in terms of death and economic damage, than most comparable countries. Why was that? Big part of that was because austerity had left us completely unprepared. UK economy shrank by nearly 10% in 2020. 10%. The largest annual contraction in over 300 years. That's worse than most of our European neighbours, and we've recovered more slowly as well, yet again. Why were we so vulnerable? Because years of austerity had hollowed out our public health system. Yes, it's mismanaged. Yes, it spends money appropriately. Yes, it hires people that we don't need. But on top of that, we're not putting the money in the right place. So we went into the pandemic with one of the weakest public health systems in the OECD relative to the size of our economy. We had less doctors per patient. We had less beds per 1,000 of the population. We've got less equipment. I mean, we've got 16 MRI machines. Japan, per million population, Japan is 24. We've got less of everything per capita than our competitors and our neighbouring countries. And we have less surge capacity. That's why we shut hospitals, because we were frightened of being overloaded, which never actually came to pass. So we affected, well, see, this is a problem, soldier. The sick people were dying at home because we locked everything down and we never told anyone to go to a hospital if you were ill. So the sick people died at home. They didn't die in hospitals. The hospitals were largely empty. And that's a verified fact because we'd emptied them and we'd sent all the sick people home early to die. That's the problem. We killed the people, not COVID. Our systems killed people, not COVID. That's why our death rate was higher than everybody else's. Nothing to do with a disease. It's the way we dealt with the disease. I might be getting into dangerous territory here for YouTube. So, because we had less of everything, we locked down harder and longer than other countries because we were frightened of this surge capacity thing. So they'd maintained their health capacity, they could deal with it. Longer lockdowns meant more economic damage. We've still got people working from home right now. What the fuck for? Why? You know? Because we've institutionalized people. That's what we've done. We've institutionalized people to be snivelling little fucking bedwetting cowards who won't crawl out of their bed if they've so much as a sniffle. The government spent approximately $106 billion over the first 2 years of the pandemic on direct support measures and economic consequences. Now, some of that spending was necessary and relatively well designed. Furlough scheme probably was a good idea. It prevented mass unemployment, although some people did try and rip the piss out it. And we ended up spending a lot more than many other countries because we were starting from a much, much weaker position. And our recovery? We're still lagging behind most comparable countries. While the UK did see some growth in the early 2025, we're still dealing with the long-term effects of having been hit harder in the first place. We're still well below everyone else in the G7, and we're not picking up as quickly. So you could say COVID was bad luck. Well, it was bad luck for us because we were fucking unprepared for anything. You know? Anything beyond a 3-car pile up in the M1 was going to cause us a big problem. So the severity of its impact in the UK was largely down to policy. Policy choices made over the previous decade, when we didn't borrow money, which would have cost us absolutely fucking nothing. We weakened our resilience through austerity with higher levels of inequality, which made everything worse. And we had a more fragmented health system. All the trusts deal with their own stuff. When you're dealing with a national problem, that's not what you want. You want people to pull together and pool resources. And then, to top it all, we go and think we're doing the right fucking thing, don't we? The cost of doing the right thing. UK's committed 21.8 billion to Ukraine, including 13 billion in military support. It doesn't matter whether you think it's morally right or not. It doesn't matter one iota if you want to support a shithole country that was the most corrupt in Europe, that was continually castigated by the US, the EU, and the United Nations for trafficking in children, trafficking women, sexual exploitation of minors, and child slavery. Whether you think it's morally correct to pump that kind of money into that to support it against Russian interference, that's fine if you think it is. But we couldn't and can't afford to do it. And we're still fucking doing it. We are so fucking stupid. We really are. The combined direct and indirect cost to Britain over the first 2 years of that war totaled approximately 106 billion for a war that's not our fucking problem. Why? 106 billion pounds spunked up against the wall for no good reason. All we've done is allow two competing sides to kill more people. That's all we've done. We haven't saved anyone. We're certainly not keeping back the tide of the Red Army, are we? All we've done is allow them to keep fighting. Well done, Britain. Great fucking job, Starmer. Great job, Sunak. Because you're all complicit. You all did it. Every fucking government is an arsehole. Yes, it's a bit depressing, soldier, I'm sorry. But it's got to be said. So, we send aid, we support Ukrainian refugees who come here and use our benefit system and drive fucking monster SUVs all over the place. We blow up pipelines and make our higher energy costs all the more apparent because we rely on outside fossil fuels because we're too frightened to fucking dig our own up. We've got a North Sea full of oil and gas that we don't use. Norway's still doing it. They're still taking theirs. We've got the West Coast, which has apparently got a massive oil field under it that we won't fucking touch. Britain spent 67 billion on wholesale gas markets in the 12 months after February 2022, adding 50 to 60 billion in additional costs compared to pre-war levels. Again, we had failed to invest in energy security and are heavily reliant on gas from outside the country when we could have been using our own. We could have easily have been using our own gas. The government's response? energy price guarantee and various support schemes. Whoopee fucking do. It helps households out to a small degree, but it's enormous fiscal cost. Enormous. These emergency interventions contribute to the sharp increase in government borrowing when money's no longer cheap. So now we're borrowing money when it's expensive to borrow. We fucking brilliant at this economic game, aren't we? Which is ultimately leading to big tax rises and more costs on everything from food, clothing, you name it. We spend more. Looking ahead, we've committed to provide $3 billion annually in military aid to Ukraine until 2030. What's a fucking joke? Why? Just throw good money after bad. Let's just keep fucking piling money into them. Why wouldn't we? Huh? That's a permanent addition to our defence spending. And that reduces the money that we spend on ourselves. And it reduces the money available for health, education and infrastructure. Great job, UK. Yeah, fuck it. You know, it's not deliberate. It's fucking gross incompetence and stupidity in the hands of the government. That's what it is, mate. Every other country has done almost the exact opposite that we've done, and they've all gone better. Every one of them. The one country that is really hitting austerity just now, and as we heard from our friend in Argentina last night, is making the country almost fucking unlivable, is Argentina. It's all very well to bring down inflation, but at the cost of making more than 50% of your people under the poverty line. 50% of Argentinians are living under the poverty line right now. That's outrageous. That shows a complete disregard for the people that you're meant to be representing and protecting. That's quite disgusting, in fact. Oh. Right, I want to be clear here. I'm not arguing we shouldn't support Ukraine. I'm fucking telling you we shouldn't be supporting Ukraine. It's not our war. Get the fuck out of it and stop spending money on it. That's what I'm telling you. If you want to be all goody two-shoes and say, yeah, fine, just help them out. No, you do it in your own time. It's not our fight. It's not our fight, and I am telling you, we shouldn't be doing it. It's too expensive. Way too expensive. The government has largely pretended that supporting Ukraine doesn't require difficult choices elsewhere. It does require difficult choices, and those difficult choices shouldn't have to be being made because charity begins at home. If you are wrecking the country and turning it into a third world shithole, you won't be able to support anyone, never mind your own people. So charity begins at home. Exactly, Espresso. And the Ukraine situation also exposed how unprepared we are. What if somebody'd actually attacked us? I mean, it's unlikely, but what if somebody had? We can't do anything about it. We're completely unfucking prepared with no infrastructure. Our defence is in tatters. Our army is leaving in droves. This Navy doesn't have enough sailors to put the ships it's already got to sea, so why the fuck it's building more, I have absolutely no idea, because it can't recruit anyone. The whole system's in the shitter. It really is. We're buying F-35s for billions and billions and billions of dollars from America. For what reason? Why? What's the point? You know what? Just stick with what we had or build European. What's wrong with the Typhoon? And the F-35's a bag of shit. Can't even service it in Britain. It has to go to either the big US base in Italy or it has to go back to Norfolk, Virginia. So, why British workers can't compete, huh? So right now, we're the heart of why Britain has become a poorer country relative to our competitors. Productivity, output per worker, hasn't grown since 2008. Before the crisis, UK productivity was around 2% annually. Since 2008, it was averaged below 0.5% per year. As economist Paul Krugman said, productivity isn't everything, but in the long run, it's almost everything. Without productivity growth, you can't have sustained wage growth. And without wage growth, living standards stagnate. International comparison are just fucking embarrassing. In 2022, US workers produced 28% more value per hour than UK workers. US workers produced 28% more value. That's nearly a third per hour than a UK worker. French and German workers were 13 to 14% more value. The French have 2-hour fucking lunches where they drink wine. And they're still 14% more productive than we are. What the fuck? And these gaps have widened since 22. Why are we so unproductive? Chronic underinvestment. UK's had the lowest business investment rate in the G7 for 24 of the last 30 years. I think that says it all, doesn't it? You can't make workers more productive without giving them better tools, without giving them better technology, without better infrastructure to help them work. Our manufacturing base has been hollowed out. We've failed to invest in the kind of advanced manufacturing that drives productivity growth in countries like Germany and South Korea. Instead, we've focused on low productivity service sectors and financial engineering. We have become the world's banker. And when the banking system falls apart, there you go. Our infrastructure is crumbling. You only need to go out there to see it. We have poor transport links. We have inadequate energy infrastructure. You know, S&P building fucking windmills that we can't use the electricity they generate because we can't put it down the lines. The lines can't take it. What's the point? What's the point in building windmills when you can't fucking send the electricity anywhere? And then you end up running diesel generators in the winter to keep these fucking things turning so they don't freeze up and then catch fire when it blows. What the fuck? What are we actually doing? It's just a joke. Skills. We've underinvested in training and skills development compared to most other developed countries. We expect workers to be productive while giving them Victorian-era infrastructure and minimal trading. In what? In the 20s? 30s, you could get on a train in London and be in Edinburgh in 6.5 hours. Can you do it any faster today? No, I don't think you can. Modern service industries require just as much investment in technology and skills as manufacturing does. And that's something we're overlooking. If we look at countries like Denmark or Switzerland, they have high productivity service sectors because they invest in them. What we do is we think that the companies that are bringing the services will invest in them. And they don't. They don't. We've only got one city in the country that's actually making money, and that's London. And yeah, it might be a shithole. I don't know. I don't live there, but it makes money. It's something, like I said, it's something like the 25th biggest economy in the world. But that's just London. ultimately the rest of Britain's just a fucking support system for it. And it's a failing support system. Brexit's made the productivity problem worse. We lost access to EU supply chains. Well, we have, yeah. We have lost access to EU talent. And now we've got fucking Captain, I'm the captain now, coming in en masse, haven't we? And I bought my degree off the stall in Mumbai, you know? And we've lost the competitive pressures that drive innovation. When you make it harder for your economy to access foreign technology and skilled workers, productivity does suffer. And this is why British wages have stagnated for over a decade. It's not because workers are lazy or because unions are too demanding, it's because we've failed to invest in making work more productive. So let's put it into international context and see just how badly fucked up we have. Let's compare it to countries that started in similar positions. So since 2008, UK GPD per capita has grown more slowly than the US. It's grown more slowly than the EU 27. It's grown more slowly than Germany and most other developed economies. We started that period as one of the richer countries in Europe. Now we are falling well behind. The investment figures are particularly damning. Not only are we on the last in the G7 for business investment, we rank 28th out of 31 in the OECD countries. Slovenia, Latvia, and Hungary, countries that were part of the Soviet bloc, are now attracting more investment relative to their economy size than we are. Our international competitive rankings tell the same story. We've fallen in virtually every measure of economic competitiveness over the past decade. Once regarded as one of the most business-friendly environments in the world, we're now struggling to attract mobile international investment. Manufacturing tells a particularly stark story. While countries like Germany maintained manufacturing base throughout the crisis, we let ours shrink further. And some people have been touched by that, closing steel mills, closing shipyards. Manufacturing now accounts for less than 10% of UK GPD, compared to over 20% in Germany. Eduardo says, money in the bank is like ice in the Sahara. Yeah, it is. Especially if you can't get to it. Our skills and education performance has also declined relative to international competitors. We're falling behind in international education rankings, and our adult training systems are weaker than most comparable countries. And this was one of our biggest strengths. Why is this happening? And perhaps if we look at some of the stuff that we've covered over the last 2 weeks, especially with institutional capture of our institutions by the left, that might explain why our education is in the turmoil that it is. So when you look at these international comparisons, what do you think's gone wrong? Did these other countries get lucky? Or is it just that we made consistently bad policy choices? Or is it a global conspiracy just against Britain? Are they all ganging up on us? You know, they got together and secretly they're just trying to put us down. I think it's more likely to be that we fucked up big time. And now we're starting to see a brain drain. Skilled British workers are increasingly looking at opportunities abroad. Why wouldn't they? particularly in countries that offer better public services, higher productivity and more investment in their future. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you go to, if you're young and got the opportunity, why wouldn't you even, somewhere like Norway, why wouldn't you go there, And Norwegian's meant to be quite a relatively easy language to learn because it's Germanic, it's not Scandinavian. Can earn more money in Germany or Canada or the States as an engineer. Why would you stay in the UK? You're probably going to you're going to get better healthcare. Maybe not so much in Canada these days, but certainly in Germany and Norway. So we've had a new Labour government since July 2024, and they've acknowledged that Britain faces serious economic challenges. They've committed to achieving the highest sustained growth in the G7. But their policies, are they up to the scale of the problems that we're facing? Labour's growth strategy has 7 pillars: economic stability, investment in infrastructure, regional development, skills and employment, industrial strategy, innovation, and trade. Fine words, all sensible priorities. But the scale of proposed interventions looks relatively modest to the size of these challenges that face us. Take the National Wealth Fund, capitalised at $7.3 billion over the entire parliamentary term. That's 5 years. $7.3 billion over 5 years. That sounds like a lot of money, but remember, we're talking about an investment deficit worth hundreds of billions. Like trying to fill a swimming pool with a garden hose. And remember, we've committed $3 billion every year to Ukraine. What the fuck for? And here's a real problem. Labour's committed to fiscal rules that may prevent them from making the large-scale public investments needed. They've pledged that the current budget must move into balance, and debt must be falling as a share of the economy by the 5th year. It's pie in the sky stuff. These guys are they're farting against thunder trying to do that. Soldier says, yeah, but Germany's attempting to pull the Russian seal. Well, yeah, look, mate, I don't understand what fucking hold Ukraine has over everyone. As I said, I mean, you know my stance on it. The place is a fucking shithole. And what could have been an impressive industrial country was completely destroyed by Victoria Nuland and George Soros. The Colour Revolution destroyed Ukraine and made it a vassal state of the US, and they're just casting it aside now because they really have no particular use for it. The EU didn't help at the time because all the EU wanted to do was make the Ukraine a customer, not a partner. They just wanted them to buy stuff from EU. Nobody ever had Ukraine's interests in their heart. So why now? Is it just because that it pisses off Putin? Is that it? Is it that petty? That we're spending all this money just because it pisses off Russia? Europe and Russia really need to get a grip. They really need to get a grip. And I think it's Europe more than Russia that needs to get the grip. Because this continued petty squabbling is, well, like what happens in the Middle East, isn't it? And you know how well that works out. So the Institute for Fiscal Studies calls this a trilemma. Great. Bandy about buzzwords. That's always helpful, isn't it? The government will have to choose between raising taxes, cutting spending, or relaxing its fiscal rules. Given they've also promised not to raise major taxes, Where does that leave us? Cut spending or relax its rules? Well, they already said they're not going to relax its rules, so cut spending. Well, there we go. If they cut spending, we're just going to end up worse off. What are other countries in the world doing? And, you know, if you're getting it wrong, all you need to do is look at someone that's doing it right and just copy them, even for a fucking couple of years, just to see if it's working for us. Germany's investing hundreds of billions in green transition. Oh, fuck me. South Korea has massive industrial development programs. China as well. China's building fucking everything, isn't it? And we are arguing about whether 7 billion over 5 years is too much. Too much. It's not enough. What would you do differently? What would you do differently, huh? The scale of Britain's economic problems requires interventions on the scale of post-war reconstruction. We need massive infrastructure investment, a complete overhaul of our skills system, and industrial strategy that actually supports productive industries. That requires borrowing significantly more money and taking political risks that I'm not sure Labour is prepared for. In fact, I'm convinced Labour is not prepared for. The first thing I would do as Prime Minister is cease all external aid. Just fucking stop it straight away. Keep all your money inside. Stop funding other people. Stop funding the UN. Does nothing for us. Stop funding the EHCR. Does nothing for us. Just stop funding every external institution in every external country. Reparations? Fuck off. You want to get reparations? Come and try and take them. That's what I'd do. Shut the doors. Sorry, we're not doing it. We're not giving you any money for nothing. If you want money, give us something in response. Labour is being too cautious, isn't it? They're trying to please people already, and they're only a year in. You've got to fucking make the hard decisions in the first half of your tenure, and then you can ease off the gas in the second while you're shaping up for your next election. Yes, exactly, Espresso Mechanic. India have a space program, yet we give them aid. India fucking shit in the streets and dump their rubbish straight into rivers. And yet we're giving them aid. But they're fucking sending rockets to the moon. No. Cut it off. Cut it off. And what's Labour not talking about? And certainly not talking about honestly. Brexit. That's still happening. The economic damage from Brexit isn't a one-off hit that we've absorbed. It's an ongoing drag in our economy that gets worse over time as other countries continue to integrate and we remain outside. I'm not saying we should join back up, but we should be striking deals and making arrangements. And if it's not with Europe, it needs to be with other people. We need to have solid fucking deals. And if that other people happens to be Russia, why the fuck not? Why not? You know? Because this whole playground mentality of, oh, they're the bad guys, I'm not talking to them, that's got to stop. We're supposed to be grown-ups. And you cannot achieve anything if you don't talk to people. And none of these arseholes will talk to each other. So, what does this actually mean for us? All these policy failures, all this economic mismanagement. It translates directly into lower living standards for British families. If wages had kept pace with pre-crisis trends, the average UK worker would be earning over £10,000 more per year. That's not abstract economic theory. That's just money. That's money that should be in your bank account right now, but it's not. Housing has become unaffordable for an entire generation, partly because we've failed to invest in social housing and allowed housing to become a financial asset rather than somewhere to live. Young people are spending 40 to 50% of their income on rent in many parts of the country. And if you're spending all that on your rent, you don't have any disposable income to buy things. Therefore, your economy doesn't flourish. Because nobody's buying anything, because they don't have any fucking money. The NHS is crumbling to a degree, yeah. Many of its hospitals are in really poor shape. 15 years of spending restraint have left it unprepared for an ageing population and for, the global pandemic that hit it, Let's face it, the NHS has been fucking moaning every winter about how the flu is bringing it down. The flu, a seasonal respiratory virus. And the NHS every fucking winter complains about the flu. Therefore, there's something wrong with the NHS. It's not funded properly. It's not managed properly. And my second task would be to rip the guts out of the NHS and make it work. Make it work properly. Get rid of diversity managers. Get rid of people hanging fucking art in hallways. Just paint the fuckers white. Then it's easier to clean up the blood. Schools are using food banks. Universities are going bankrupt. We've underinvested in education at every level, while other countries have been building world-class education systems. And that's true. That is true.
That's true.
Try getting a train that runs on time. Try finding a road that hasn't got a pothole on it. Our infrastructure looks increasingly poorer than our Victorians had to deal with. And compared to countries that continued investing, it's positively primitive. I don't think it's abstract that we're talking about here. I think it's this economic decline will have real consequences for real people. And perhaps, most damning of all, and most telling of all, life expectancy in Britain has barely increased since 2010. And in some areas, it's gone backwards. That's almost unprecedented for a developed country during peacetime. Austerity hasn't made us poorer. It's literally shortened people's lives. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most politicians don't want to acknowledge. Britain's economic problems aren't just the result of individual policy mistakes. They reflect deeper systemic issues with how we approach economic policy. We built an economy over-dependent on financial services during the boom years. Yeah, we did. And while that was profitable when asset prices were rising, it created dangerous vulnerabilities that were exposed in 2008 and haven't been addressed since. Our financial system prioritises short-term profits over long-term productive investment. British companies pay out more in dividends and share buybacks than they invest in research, development and new equipment. That's the opposite of what you see in successful economies like Germany or South Korea. Our political system encourages short-term thinking. Every 5 years we change direction. We cancel the previous government's infrastructure projects and start over. You can't build a successful economy with a 5-year planning horizon. You just can't do it. Politicians love to blame the planning system for our economic problems, but the evidence suggests that macroeconomic factors are far more important. The uncertainty created by Brexit, the underinvestment caused by austerity, the weakness of our skills system, these are the real constraints in growth. Compare our approach to countries like Germany, Norway, Sweden, the US, they maintained focus on manufacturing and long-term investment even during the financial boom years. They have institutions designed to support long-term economic development. We have institutions designed to support short-term financial gains. We have all the ingredients for economic success. Good universities, skilled workers, decent institutions, access to global markets. What we're lacking is a consistent long-term economic strategy. So do you think our problems are fixable, or are they running too deep? Are they running too deep? Look at smaller, successful economies like Denmark, Switzerland, or even the Netherlands. They're all managed to maintain higher living standards and strong public services while competing in a global economy. It's not inevitable that Britain declines, but it requires us making different choices and sticking with them for longer than a single parliamentary term. So, if we were running the country, what would we do? We need to acknowledge the scale of the investment deficit. We're not talking about fine-tuning around the edges. We need infrastructure investment on the scale of the post-war reconstruction. Hundreds of billions of pounds over the next decade. Fuck the green stuff as well. Dig and drill. Dig and drill. Get the black gold out the ground. We need an industrial strategy that actually supports productive industry. That means massive investment in technology, in advanced manufacturing and digital infrastructure. Fuck the green shit. Other countries are doing it. China's building a coal-fired power station every week. One a week. We're falling behind every year we delay. You're going to be a successful economy in a digital age, you need energy. We are sitting on a mountain of it. Stop pissing about with this green strategy. Fuck it. Even if it is causing it, we'll deal with it later. We need to completely overhaul our skills and training systems. We can't compete with countries that invest heavily in human capital while we leave people to figure it out for themselves. We need an honest conversation about our relationship with Europe. Can't have a serious growth strategy while ignoring your close neighbours. We need tax and fiscal policy that supports long-term investment rather than short-term consumption. Might mean higher taxes on some wealth and property, lower taxes on business investment. Yeah, it might sound bad to you, but you got to get businesses investing in business. Because the only way you'll get more jobs and better money is if you've got more business investing in business, more productivity. Yeah, and it's going to be expensive. And where's the money coming from? But here's the thing, we're already paying the cost of not investing. We've already got lower productivity, higher welfare spending, crumbling infrastructure, brain drain. The question isn't whether we can afford to invest, it's whether we can afford not to invest. And this is where I think Labour's going to make the wrong fucking choice again. Because it requires political courage that British politicians, regardless of party, regardless of whether they're Labour, Conservative, Reform, Advance, or any of that pish, none of them have got the political backbone to address these issues and stick to it. That's the problem. Because a lot of these things aren't going to be popular with people. And when you're unpopular with people, you will get voted out. But these arseholes all know what needs to be done, but they will try and hold power regardless of how much harm they do to the country. You don't need a global cabal fighting against you when you have a bunch of greedy bastards sitting in a house that just want to hang on to power. That's all you need for this to have happened. And that's exactly why this has happened. Because they really don't have any compassion for you and me. They don't care about the country. They just want to be in charge. That's all they want. Right, let's wrap it up. United Kingdom suffered an unprecedented economic decline since 2008. We're poorer, less productive, less competitive than we should be. Our public services are in the shitter. Our infrastructure is Victorian. And our entire generation has been denied the prosperity they should have inherited. The cumulative cost of our policy fails is at least £1.8 trillion. Not abstract, reality. That's money that should have been spent on hospitals, schools, transport, housing, and in your pocket. Every single bit of it was preventable. The politicians who implemented austerity knew it would cause economic damage. Politicians who pushed Brexit knew it would reduce trade and investment. The politicians who failed to invest during the era of cheap money knew they were missing a historic opportunity. They chose ideology over evidence, short-term political gain over long-term economic success. We could have been better. We could have been Denmark. We could have been Switzerland. We could have been any number of successful economies that maintained investment, built strong institutions, and focused on long-term prosperity, rather than short-term political gains. Do you think Britain can recover? Do you? Or are we now a second-tier economy and that's it? What do you think? Power is all they want, espresso. Yeah, you're right. They don't give a shit about the country. They really don't. So, yeah, I think that's about enough tonight, isn't it? What a horror show. Tomorrow's will be better. And I think I'm going to have Jay Drakemure, ex-cop. I think him and I will be having a chat on Thursday night. So come along for that. Tomorrow nights will be lighter than this. This got quite dark, didn't it? It's quite annoying though. It's quite annoying when you know that these things are preventable and it's only through the blindness of political greed and avarice that we've ended up in the situations that we're in. And we've got to stop giving money away. We have got to stop giving money away. Crazy. Absolutely fucking crazy. Yeah. Thank you, people. Thanks for bearing with me. Sometimes you just need to rant. Have a good one. Indeed. It's been great for you.